Hey everybody, my name's Colin and this is my first ever YouTube video. Hopefully it's not going to be too obvious. Before I go Sherlock Holmes on the new Rogue One trailer, I'd like to take a minute to tell you how this video was conceived. When I first saw the Rogue One trailer, I was pretty impressed. It looks like a Star Wars movie and that's great news to me. After watching the trailer a few times though, I started to get a feeling of deja vu because there are some really striking similarities in the trailer to a particular Star Wars story that exists in the now defunct Star Wars Expanded Universe. The possibility that this movie could be what it looked like it might be sent me into a downward spiral of obsessive fanboy research, and I started to find more and more clues and connections. I decided I was going to scramble together a video with everything I found, and I even produced the content for a pretty comprehensive analysis. Everything was going great until I made the egregious mistake of thinking I could cobble the whole thing together in Windows Movie Maker. After spending half a day editing, and only 5 minutes of video to show for it, I realized I had accidentally stumbled into the 8th layer of hell. Needless to say, I couldn't bring myself to go back, so I decided to acquire some functional editing software. And so here we are. Without further ado, let's get this thing started. So, what is Rogue One? Whoops, wrong picture. Here we go. Dark Forces. Back in the 90s, when LucasArts was on a winning streak, they made this awesome computer game that is essentially a Star Wars version of Doom. The success of this game led LucasArts to produce 4 totally amazing sequels. They're definitely my favorite Star Wars games, and in my opinion, they were the best and most fun representations of the Star Wars universe in video game form. So, in Dark Forces, Mon Mothma hires the help of mercenary Kyle Katarn and his partner Jan Ors to steal the Death Star plans. After the plans are retrieved and the Death Star successfully destroyed, Emperor Palpatine, who is understandably angry, retaliates with a new kind of droid shock troop called the Dark Troopers. The architect behind this Dark Trooper program is Imperial General Rom Mak. Mak, as it happens, is actually the final boss in the Dark Forces video game, but he's no match for Kyle Katarn because, as some of you may know, Katarn is basically the Chuck Norris of the Star Wars universe. In my efforts to offer you a better context to all things Dark Forces that are revealed in the Rogue One trailer, I'm going to start with locations and landmarks. The first mission in Dark Forces has Kyle and Jan flying to Denuda, as it is reported to house an Imperial research facility containing a set of Death Star plans. Here's the Wikipedia entry for Denuda. Trid was the de facto capital of planet Denuda. In 1 BBY, an Imperial garrison on the outskirts of Trid was expanded into a full military installment and home to a sprawling research facility. It also contained a spaceport, a Bomar Order temple, a school, a fusion plant, and various homes and small businesses. Also, Denuda functions as a stopover on one of the many hyperspace routes leading to Kessel. Let's get the Kessel bit out of the way first. In what appears to be the city of Trid, we get a small piece of evidence, and it's in Arabesh. I could only make out the first 4 letters of the 6-letter word. Capital K, lowercase e, lowercase s, and s. Maybe this building is a shop or cantina or something for spacefaring travelers on their way to Kessel. Now, here's a shot from the trailer that has quite a lot going on. This ship caught my eye almost immediately, and since it's probably not going anywhere, I'm going to call it a landmark. It looks a bit like an X-Wing, but I'm pretty sure this is the red herring of the trailer because it's definitely not an X-Wing. By looking at some set photos from the scene, we can see that the engines on the ship are way too big to belong to an X-Wing. Just look at how small these people look standing next to them. This ship is, however, about the right size to be Kyle's ship, the Moldy Crow, or his later ship, the Raven's Claw. And since this wreckage doesn't really look exactly like either of those ships, it wouldn't surprise me if liberties were taken in the design. That said, the front of the ship does look rather beak-like, don't you think? On a side note, for those of you who enjoy your Star Wars lore buffet style, you might remember that the Moldy Crow required holographic goggles to pilot properly. This is actually the reason the Moldy Crow was destroyed. One time, when Kyle was in a tight situation, he tried flying the thing without goggles and crashed it Harrison Ford style. So, wait a second. Are these the Multicrow's holographic goggles seen right here? Moving on. Note the Return of the Jedi style backdoor as seen in these shots in the trailer. I'm going to assume that these are all the same location. Could this be the Imperial research facility where our gang of mercenary heroes steal the Death Star plans? I think probably yes. What is this massive building in the background? At first I thought it was part of the Imperial research facility, but seeing as how these shots in the trailer allude to the facility being underground, I jumped to the simplest conclusion. That being no, probably not. It looks to me kind of like a mix between the Yavin 4 temple and Jabba's palace, which actually used to be a Bomar Order temple before Jabba made it his own. I'm guessing, and I'm just throwing it out there, that the Bomar monks really regret listing their temple on Airbnb. Before I started making this video, I had no idea that this thing in Jabba's palace is actually a monk of the Bomar Order. Not only that, it's the Bomar monk's final form. So basically, the Bomar Order is a fairly extreme religion, all about mental development over sensory stimulus to the point of, well, becoming enlightened and turning into a jar with nifty spider legs. But what might one of these monks look like before this horrible, horrible transformation? Here's none other than Ralph McQuarrie's original concept art for a monk of the Bomar Order. Looks eerily similar to Donnie Yen's character, doesn't it? If this isn't proof enough, then let's read about the role of Mek Odom in Dark Forces. Mek Odom was a human male Imperial officer who served the Galactic Empire and later joined the Alliance to restore the Republic during the Galactic Civil War. He was assigned to the research facility on Danuta, and he was an extremely spiritual person and supporter of the Bomar Order. Here's a wiki entry about the mission. While Katarn was on a mission to steal the partial set of Death Star plans from the city of Trid, he encountered Odom before infiltrating the research facility. Odom was persuaded to shut down the base's outer perimeter, allowing Katarn an easier entry. During the skirmish, the two staged a blaster shot that wounded and rendered Odom unconscious, hoping that this would remove Odom from suspicion. Here's a couple of set photos that indicate Mek Odom does indeed take part in this attack on the research facility. Story seems to fit, but how do we know he's an Imperial officer? Check out the armband he's wearing. This is why the stormtroopers aren't attacking him. I also think I discovered why stormtroopers are always so ill-prepared for any kind of resistance whatsoever. Felicity Jones and Diego Luna appear to play our two main characters, as they are shown in 5 different scenes together. They certainly bear a resemblance in name and appearance to their video game counterparts, but for the purpose of this video, there isn't much about their characters specifically that I need to explain. So I'm going to move on. If you're like me and have been pretty hyped for this movie, then you may have heard Alan Tudyk is playing this droid character. Sadly, we don't get to see much of him, but what we get from his reveal is an important piece of evidence to understand who the main adversaries in Rogue One will be. This leads us to the Dark Troopers. All you really need to know is that there are 3 main types of Dark Troopers. Seeing these guys in the trailer really inflamed my cognitive dissonance as a fan of the video game series. Is this real life, I ask myself? Are there any other clues that can confirm these are Dark Troopers aside from their obvious darkness? Let's backtrack just a bit and take a look at Alan Tudyk's droid, who, in my opinion, resembles the Phase 1 Dark Trooper, but may actually be inspired by another character from a totally different expanded universe story. IG-97, or Iggy, was a prototype assassin droid constructed early in the reign of the Galactic Empire. They were essentially Imperial battle droids. Why is this relevant? I'll get to that soon. First, make note of his paint job. It has a black, yellow, and red color scheme. We can find those same colors on the Dark Troopers. Another interesting thing I noticed about them was this shot here where we see a Dark Trooper scan the horizon from right to left in a very robotic manner. They're kind of giving off a little bit of a Cylon vibe. Okay, so I've nailed down 2 possible candidates for the Phase 1 and Phase 2 Dark Troopers, but what about the third? Remember this guy? Imperial General Rom Mak was a decorated hero of the Clone Wars. He developed an obsession with cybernetics and personal combat. He was such a badass that he would fight various battle droids in arena-style combat on his days off, stocking his trophy room with his defeated contenders. IG-97 or Iggy was one of those droids he defeated and kept as a trophy. I have an idea how this might play into the plot, but I feel that this video is long enough, so you can go ahead and look him up if you want. I'll list some wiki entries I used for reference in the video description below if you're interested. Okay, so in Dark Forces, Rom Mock gets pretty pissed at Kyle Katarn because he's running around setting all his prized Dark Troopers on fire, so he decides to take matters into his own hands. He dons his custom Dark Trooper Phase 3 exosuit and faces Kyle in single combat. He loses because, hey, video game, so he never really had a chance. Let's take a look at him. There we go. Yep, Forrest Whitaker is General Rom Mock. Look at the color of his armor, black and yellow. His left shoulder pad even looks similar to the Phase 3 Dark Trooper shoulder pads. He has what looks like a small breathing mask strapped to his chest. Maybe he normally uses his helmet for breathing? Perhaps all that fighting took its toll on him. So where is his helmet? I believe that this is Rom Mock with his helmet on. Look at the hooded figure's shoulder pads compared to Forrest Whitaker's. They're both asymmetrical, and when I stamp the outline of Forrest Whitaker's armor onto this picture, it fits pretty nicely. We also know that Mock is loyal to Emperor Palpatine, so I don't really feel the need to question who's in the bacta tank. The last piece of evidence isn't found in the trailer at all, but on Twitter of all places. During my quest for the ultimate Rogue One theory, I stumbled upon a tweet by Chris Thurston, editor of PC Gamer Pro. I'd forgotten that Gary Whitta actually worked as a screenwriter for Rogue One. Gary Whitta was involved with the founding of the original PC Gamer magazine, and he worked as an editor until 2000. So I checked his Twitter page, and I found this posted 1 week after the Rogue One trailer was launched. Now that I think of it, I might still have that 1997 issue of PC Gamer. I think it's in a box in my parents' basement somewhere. I think that about covers it. There were more details and clues in the trailer that I found that were interesting, but they weren't really related to Dark Forces in any ascertainable way. So yeah, I mean, I'm convinced that Rogue One is Dark Forces, and it's kind of blowing my mind. I never thought something like this could ever happen, and now I'm really excited for this movie. Anyways, please feel free to let me know if you agree or disagree with the evidence in the comments below. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video.